How in God's name could they look this bad? And that's what I walked away from. So give McNeese props. I'm not trying to take anything away from them, but I really, really think the story was how bad Clemson was in that first half, and really stands out because they didn't seem ready to play at all.
Stephen, I agree with you that Clemson was bad, but McNeese State, they got a bunch of dudes. All the guys that play for McNeese State, they're high Division I transfers. Brandon Murray, all right, Georgetown. He played at the very highest level. Copeland, Syracuse. I mean, they got dudes. They got long, hard-playing, tough dudes. Now, I agree with you 100%. Clemson was a no-show. They were not the aggressor. They got pushed back. Instead of fighting and drawing a line in the sand, you know what? They wilted. They got beat to every 50-50 ball. They got drilled on the glass, and they didn't compete defensively, keeping the ball in front. I agree with what you said about Clemson, but McNeese State, that's not a Southland team. That's a team made up of high major transfers.
Well,
you transfer up, you transfer down.
Coach, they did look like one in the second half. They got outscored 51-29. What is it, over the final 15-30 of the game? They got outscored by 22 points. So if Clemson had showed up in the first half and showed like they had a damn pulse, they'd be advancing instead of McNeese.
I'll tell you, this McNeese State team, and their next opponent is going to be Purdue.
They're
got a little St. Pete in them. They might have a little St. Pete in them. Remember, Kentucky,
I can believe that.
Yeah. Okay.
Style of play, only one ball handler for Purdue and Braden Smith.
Right.
This could be
we'll keep our eye on them,
again.
Coach. But I want to keep it pushing here, guys. Clemson wasn't the only ACC team that was sent home. Louisville also lost, which means we haven't even completed the first round, and already the ACC only has 2 teams left in the tournament. That would be Duke, a 1 seed, and North Carolina, 11. Since the tournament expanded to 64 teams in 1985, the fewest amount of teams the conference has advanced to the second round is 2. Never have they sent 1 or fewer. Okay, Coach, what do the losses from Clemson and Louisville say about the state of the ACC?
Well, look, it's even bigger than just Louisville and Clemson losing. It's the state of the ACC. Think about this. Clemson, they weren't supposed to. I mean, Louisville wasn't supposed to be in the NCAA tournament. I mean, Pat Kelsey took over a program that was in disarray, and what did he do? He turned the thing around in 1 year. All right, and then North Carolina just barely got in. So if those 2 things don't happen, you're talking about 2 teams from the ACC getting in the NCAA tournament. So here's the bigger problem. One of the college presidents is going to realize that you can change coaches all you want. Your investment equals your expectation. All right, you've got to invest in coaches, you've got to invest in infrastructure, and you've got to invest in NIL. Because if you look at the ACC, excluding the top 2 or 3 teams, there's no investment. You look at the SEC, 14 teams in the NCAA tournament, you see tremendous investment. The way in the business of college basketball, and it is a business, if you don't invest in your program and give them the coaches the resources, you have no shot because you have no resources to go out and secure the players you need to secure to win at the highest level. See what the ACC did in a non-conference? They got drilled by the SEC. Until that decision's made across the board in the ACC, this could potentially be the norm.
Coach, I'm disappointed in your response. There's nothing that you said that's wrong. It's nothing that you said. I'm not challenging the veracity of anything that you said, but I'm incredibly disappointed. You're old school, okay? You were around to see what the ACC was. Remember Duke and North Carolina? First of all, thank God for Duke, because Duke hasn't dissipated in any way. They are still the blue bloods, okay? They are still who the hell they are. Duke University, even with Coach Gates gone and Sean there, I mean, he's doing a hell of a job. Props to him. Props to their program for recruiting the players that they've recruited. We understand that North Carolina has been up and down. Hubert Davis had better years than he's had this past season, okay? Even though North Carolina is still in the mix. You want to see that rivalry, Duke-North Carolina. You want to see your North Carolina State coming up the rear. You want to see Virginia be relevant. We all know that when you think Syracuse, you think Big East. They're in ACC now. Why is Miami in the ACC? Do we really? I mean, I love Miami, the city, okay? But the university, I respect it, but I don't want to see them in the ACC. Come on. SMU, I'm just looking at Stanford, really? Out west, out west in the Bay Area, okay? What that got to do with the ACC? I mean, think about this. It doesn't, you look at them, and there's certainly a money grab. You collaborate, you make sure you bring people into the conference. You're supposed to be elevating it. I want to see Wake Forest. When I think ACC, I'm thinking Wake Forest. I'm thinking NC State. I'm definitely thinking Duke of North Carolina, first and foremost, Virginia. I'm looking at stuff like that. I want to see somebody from damn near the Pacific Northwest, for crying out loud, the Bay Area, and Stanford being in the conference, and then Stanford's in one conference, and the same conference that Stanford is in out in the Bay Area. So is SMU, which is in Dallas, Texas, for crying out loud. What the hell is going on? That's what the problem is with the ACC. The relationships, the rivalries, the things that you talked about that had you button run. You could roll up on I-85 or I-95 and run into somebody from another school, and y'all talking smack to one another. It was, it was something that was prideful that you held on to. Same principle with the Big East. Same principle with the Pac-12 and all of that stuff. It's all changed now. And I think the ACC has been contaminated by it all, because I'm looking at half of these teams in this conference you do not care about. In terms of the ACC, you do not care about them being in the ACC, because that's not what personifies the ACC or has personified the ACC all of these years. That's what I wanted to hear you say, Coach, and I'm disappointed I ain't hear that come out your mouth.
I'm going to one-up you, Stephen A., because I got a solution. I've said this for 2 years, and Coach K has said it recently. The Big East and the ACC need to find some type of collaboration. Football needs to separate. Football is absolutely separate. They play one game a week. All right, but non-revenue sports and basketball, the ACC and the Big East need to become one. A absolutely monster basketball conference. Bring back real rivalries. You have to bring back these rivalries. You think about UConn and Duke, right? Think about St. John's and North Carolina in Madison Square Garden. We've got to create events. Right now, you've got an ACC that's disjointed. You hit it right on the money. We need to create events, because everyone says, well, the season doesn't start until the NCAA tournament. The season doesn't start until after the college football playoffs. So the season doesn't start until the Super Bowl is over. We need to create events, and someone needs to be bold. And bold means basically collaborating between the ACC and the Big East, create a super basketball conference, create the rivalries and the events that we need. Because right now, on its own, the ACC,
I'm fine with that, Coach.
If you talk about, they're doing.
I'm fine with that, Coach. If you talk about getting rid of some of these teams from out west and in Texas, if you're talking about that, I'm all for it. The fact of the matter is, as long as you got those cats in the ACC, it's not the same. I think when you talk about the big collaboration that you're talking about, there's a lot of people in the Northeast especially who would fully embrace that, because it makes sense. When you see one team from Dallas, another team from Palo Alto, another team from, come on. That's not the ACC. That's not what gravitates you to the Atlantic Coast Conference. I'm sorry. I'm not feeling it at all.
I agree with you.
Any more than I'm feeling Creighton and all of these guys in the Big East.
All right.
Oh, I like Creighton because they have a commonality with most of the Big East schools.
Oh, I don't like Creighton.
Maybe that's a bad example.
Yeah, Molly doesn't like Creighton because they put Calipari right in the middle of the lane, and he plays a one-man zone, and they never foul.
Speaking of why I don't like Creighton, Danny Hurley has some comments about the conferences merging. We'll get into that in the second hour.
Obviously, a New York kid, first game back in 15 games. Huge win for this Arkansas team. Huge win for John Calipari, and it sets the stage. The Godfather against John Calipari. You talk about two guys. Oh, by the way, 13-10 against Rick Pitino. This is a huge game for Rick Pitino because he's put this team together. All right. Not a lot was expected of John Calipari. They were 0-5. First year in the job. First year in the job, Rick Pitino, they didn't make the NCAA tournament. First year in the job, Arkansas, they made the NCAA tournament. Now it's Rick Pitino, John Calipari. Rick Pitino got John Calipari his first job, helping him get the UMass job. Then John Calipari built it up where he was playing Rick Pitino for Sweet 16s and Final Four. So these two guys respect each other, not exactly in love with each other, not exactly going to break a good bottle of wine or some bourbon or have a beer together. This is a big-time game, but this is a huge game, in my opinion, for Rick Pitino.
Well, neither of them need to be drinking anyway, so we shouldn't lose any sleep over that, Coach. That's number one. Number two, here's the deal. I think there was a big-time win for John Calipari because of the reasons that you articulated. I mean, coming into the game yesterday, I mean, listen, you had Kansas winning 17 straight first-round games, okay? This is not something that Bill Self is accustomed to. But it happened yesterday, and it happened against a great coach in John Calipari, who, in all fairness, has something to prove. Again, he's been recruiting All-Americans, guys who are one and done. You know, has had top recruiting classes in the nations on so many occasions. He's only got one national championship to show for it. So having a team that doesn't have these expectations, and for once he goes in as an underdog and you're pulling upsets or whatever, it reminds you of what made Cal so successful to begin with. We saw the UMass program come out of nowhere. Remember, Coach, I was covering Temple University for the Philadelphia Inquirer. I'm very, very familiar with John Calipari. That's how long he and I go back. Bruiser Flynn, his assistant, is one of my personal friends, one of my great friends. He's a wonderful, wonderful, wonderful person and a coach. And he's on Calipari's bench right now, okay? I've been rooting for them for years, but when you see Calipari and the job that he did at UMass, Marcus Camby, Lou Rowe, Mike Williams and the crew. You remember all of that, Coach, bet just as well as I do. John Calipari had exceeded expectations, not just with his recruiting ability, but with his coaching ability. Then the expectations come, and he would answer the call in terms of having this team's competitive, get to the Final Four, but couldn't close the door on the national championship until Anthony Davis did it for him at Kentucky. Before and after, that has not been the case. So to see him in this situation right now, where the expectations have been minimized to some degree, and he's looking up at others in terms of their recruitment, the personnel that they have, etc. For him to win a game like that yesterday was a big, big deal for him, and it'll be even bigger if he beats Rick Pitino.
Okay.
No doubt.
All right, so Calipari and Pitino have split their previous 4 NCAA tournament matchups with each coaching win 2 apiece. Their 5 matchups are tied for the second most meetings between 2 head coaches in NCAA tournament history. So, Stephen A., you just alluded to it a bit, but would it be a bigger statement for Pitino or Coach Cal with a win?
Well, it would be a bigger statement for Cal because when you look at St. John's this year, you expect St. John's the number 2 seed. St. John's has the elite defense in basketball. We look at the final score yesterday, and people don't realize it was a close game. They was within 1 point of one another. I think it was like 33-32 or 32-31, something along those lines. And then they amped up that defense, clamped down, and them brothers couldn't do anything with Rick Pitino's defense. It's just that simple. They can run you out of the building because they create opportunities for themselves because they're like piranhas going after you, particularly in the second half. That's what Rick Pitino's team is known for doing. He's the favorite. And if you go up against Arkansas and Calipari beats that team, coached by that man, having the leading defense in the nation, it is far bigger for Calipari to beat Pitino than for Pitino on this day to beat an Arkansas team. If it was a Kentucky team, it would be different. If it was a Memphis team led by Derrick Rose, it would be different. We haven't said anything about Arkansas all year long. Like Coach said, they started out 0-5 in the conference, for crying out loud. There was questions as to whether or not they were going to make the tournament. They certainly didn't win the conference tournament. We get all of that. To go into the NCAA tournament, to beat Bill Self, and then to beat Rick Pitino in the first weekend of the NCAA tournament, that would be huge for John Calipari, without question.
100% agree with you, Stephen. And by the way, you're playing hurt. You are on top of your game. I'm like, you're no marshmallow. I mean, when the light goes on, you just get it done. Much props. But you're 100% correct. I mean, like, this would be huge for John. And, you know, the one thing is last year, I know when John Calipari went and took the Arkansas job, you were all over me. And I said, he's not leaving Kentucky. He's moving to Arkansas. And this is exactly the reason why. You know what? He needed to unplug, plug back in, reboot, and get re-energized. You can only get beaten down by the pressure of maybe a Kentucky for so long. I've seen him this year. This is the best job he's done in a number of years. More importantly, he's having more fun and enjoying it. So even though he left basically Camelot, as Rick Pitino calls Kentucky, this was the right move for him because you see him enjoying his team and coaching. Having said that, all the pressure is on Rick Pitino tomorrow. Absolutely, all the pressure. I mean, this is the team. New York City, selling out Madison Square Garden, Big East champions. I mean, the white suit, the Godfather back in town. He's on the back page of the Post every single day. All the pressure is on. You know what?
And deserves
Calipari kind of likes that. You know me. You know that, right, Stephen A? Kind of like that chip on his shoulder when he was at UMass. Now, look, When he was at UMass, Rick kicked his rear end. But
Yes.
Cal got to the Sweet 16, got to the Final Four. But John Calipari, when he's backed up against the wall, that's the best version of John Calipari.
That's true.
All right. But the players got to play, guys. St. John's favored by 7.5. We can't wait for that one on Saturday.